Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Kelsey Franklin with Aberdeen Group, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Choosing the Right ERP to Improve Your Manufacturing Operations. The webinar today is hosted by Aberdeen Group and sponsored by Epicor. Our presenter is Nick Castellina, the Research Director of Business Planning and Execution at Aberdeen Group. His full bio is available on the left of your screen. We have about 35 minutes of content prepared today, followed by a Q&A session. I encourage you all to submit your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A field on the top left of your screen, and our speaker will try to address as many of your questions as possible at the end. Also, to the left of your screen is our resource section. There you will find today's presentation deck, as well as some additional data sheets and content about today's webinar. And now I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thanks, Kelsey, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar today. As Kelsey mentioned, I'm Nick Castellina. I'm the Research Director for the Aberdeen Group's Business Planning and Execution Research Practice, which means I cover a lot of different things here at Aberdeen. But it's really all about how your organization can manage its business from end to end. So topics including enterprise resource planning, budgeting and forecasting, financial management, business process management, project management, and a few other topics. And why you're here today is to listen to me talk about some research gained from a report that I wrote earlier this year around trends in ERP in manufacturing. This is a report that we've been doing at Aberdeen for the past at least 9 years or so, certainly before I was even here at Aberdeen. That uncovers how ERP is used within manufacturing organizations to become more efficient and more effective and ultimately service customers better to increase that customer satisfaction and profits. With that said, let's talk about some of the key findings that you're going to hear today. And again, this was gained from an online survey that we did of about 100 manufacturers earlier this year. And here are some of the findings that you'll see. We'll talk a little bit about the pressures that manufacturers are facing, that they're facing unpredictable demand and have difficulty utilizing increasing amounts of data. So they're not able to effectively understand how much of a certain product they're going to need to produce and where their materials are coming from either. It's very difficult to understand this information because we're in volatile markets where things can flux very quickly and very greatly. So not having insight into the data that's available to help you manage that demand is a key challenge that manufacturers are facing today. And as these organizations grow as well, they're facing increased amounts of data that they need to integrate within their operation. So they need to interpret this data and use it to make decisions and run the organization more effectively, even though it's coming in at a much higher rate than it ever has in the past. We're going to talk about ERP and how that's used in manufacturing. I would say that ERP is a business solution that's very much ubiquitous in manufacturing. The majority of manufacturers today already have an ERP solution, but what really makes a best-in-class manufacturer is how they're utilizing their ERP. And what you'll see is that as you're looking to select your next solution, manufacturers look for more updated solutions with better feature sets. So they use more of the ERP solution itself across their organization. They're taking advantage of all the functionality that's available to them to become more effective. And we're going to talk about how your organization can identify an ERP solution that will be a really good fit to manage your organization more effectively. And then lastly, we're going to talk about some of the performance benefits of organizations that select a well-suited ERP are able to drive within their organization when it comes to things like profit margins, inventory accuracy, complete and on-time shipments. There's a variety of metrics that your organization can really, truly improve by selecting and utilizing the solution effectively. So we'll be talking about ERP itself, some of the extensions to ERP, as well as some of the supporting technologies as well, such as mobile technology and cloud technology. So there's a lot of data here. Don't focus too much on the exact numbers, except in situations where I tell you really want to. What really is most important is the best practices that leading manufacturers are utilizing. You should be understanding if they're more likely to do something than a follower, they're going to be more effective. So with that said, that's why you should listen to me today. Let's talk a little bit about why you should believe the things I'm saying. And I'll talk a little bit about how Aberdeen conducts its research and how we're able to deliver some key recommendations to organizations like yourself or manufacturers like yourself as you look to improve. So we do all of our research with online surveys, which we supplement with end-user phone calls. And within those surveys, we've got quite a large community that you can, of course, join at Aberdeen.com, where we're walking every single survey taker through what we call our best-in-class our PACE methodology and our best-in-class framework. So PACE stands for Pressures, Actions, Capabilities, and Enablers. So we're walking every survey taker through a series of questions that's designed to understand, what are the key pressures? What is causing your organization to think differently? What are the things that are challenging your organization as you attempt to improve? Things like lack of visibility into essential data, inability to forecast demand effectively, rising competition. These are the type of pressures that manufacturers today are facing, and we'll outline some of those later in the presentation. Then we we ask questions about the actions that organizations are facing. What are the key strategies that they're putting into place in the face of the pressures that they're experiencing and helping them to become a little bit better? Then we have the capabilities, which is the core competencies that an organization is putting into place and implementing. Things like organizational capabilities, process capabilities, knowledge management, performance management. These are the things such as the ability to do demand planning and forecasting that really help to underlie some of those strategies that a top performer is more likely to have implemented. And then lastly, the easy enablers, which is the technology that provides these capabilities, things like ERP, things like mobile tech, enterprise performance management, business process management, all of these different technologies that help organizations to become more effective and manage themselves from end to end. And then we also have what we call our best-in-class framework. And within this report, we're actually going to be talking about leaders and followers rather than best-in-class, industry average, and laggard. But the idea is still the same. What we're doing is we're taking survey takers and we're grouping them into different segments based upon their answers to key performance metric questions. So we're asking questions like, what was your change in profit margins over the past 2 years? What is your inventory accuracy? What is your complete and on-time shipments? What is your time to decision? These type of things, and we're rating every single survey taker on these answers and placing them into 3 classes when we're using best in class, but 2 classes for this presentation today. So the top 35% in performance is going to be what we call the leaders, and the bottom 65% would be what we call the followers. So what we're able to do is marry the framework and the methodology together to provide a step-by-step guide on what the top-performing organizations are doing that those that aren't top-performing organizations are not doing. So you could say, hey, if a leading manufacturer is 50% more likely to have implemented this specific module of ERP, that's something us as a following manufacturer should be considering doing because it might be contributing to the leader's success. So, like I said, don't worry about the exact number on a lot of these slides. Worry if a leader is doing something at a higher rate than a follower, and that'll tell you that's something that you might want to be considering doing. With that said, why don't we jump into the actual data from the research, which you can find at Aberdeen.com or epicor.com. And we asked manufacturers responding to this survey to select their top 2 pressures out of a list of about 10. And these are ones that rose to the top, really the top 5 pressures that they're facing. And there are a few different key themes here. Number one, you'll see is that manufacturers are faced with unpredictable demand. They don't know when there's going to be spikes in demand or lulls in demand. So they're having difficulty ramping up production effectively. They might be experiencing times when they're producing too much product and it's sitting on the shelf and causing you inventory holding costs, or there might be other times where there's a lot of opportunity out there where your organization could really be reaping in the revenue and you just don't have the product to sell. And that really is reflected throughout the organization. When you can't adequately predict demand, you're going to have trouble securing good prices from your suppliers. You're going to have trouble communicating with your customers. It's really one of the biggest problems, or the biggest problem according to the survey that manufacturers are facing today. The rest of the things really flow from that. The increased volume and complexity of data. So as manufacturers grow, across geographic boundaries, or they add new product lines, or they have new customers, maybe purchasing things online. There's a lot more data that's being generated, and that can be very difficult to interpret, particularly if you're an organization that's running yourself on spreadsheets. Top-performing manufacturers are doing a better job of actually interpreting that data, utilizing their business solutions. So when you've got all this data coming in, it makes it difficult to predict demand. It makes it difficult to allocate your resources, whether they're skilled or machinery or products or whatever. Having a lack of insight into data is a pretty big problem as your organization attempts to become more agile and more effective. For example, you see that 22% noted an inability to collaborate with the extended enterprise, which could be suppliers, resellers, customers, regulators. It could be a variety of different key stakeholders that really have information that should be impacting your organization. If you are getting information from your resellers that there's going to be a lot more demand of a particular product, you can ramp up production. If you're being told from a supplier that a certain material is going to become scarce, in the winter, for example, you're going to be able to actually ramp up production in the near term to make sure that you have the products to carry you through it and make sure you're not missing out on opportunities. So sharing data with the extended enterprise is extremely valuable for making decisions and relates to the other pressure about the increased volume and complexity of data. And then lastly, the maintaining the security and stability of data. It's really all about ensuring that your decision makers and your line of business have the information they need to perform their jobs effectively and can interpret that and really find it. So that's when you're really relying on the technology, and that's why it becomes important to identify what is really in an ERP solution that can make your organization the most effective. So before I can give you tips on how you want to actually perform more effectively, it looks like somebody changed the slide here, but what you see is the leaders and the followers, which the leaders being the top 35% and the followers being the bottom 65%. So disregard the best in class and the industry average categories here. But this is how we determined who was in a top performing organization. We rated them on 4 different key performance metrics. These included complete and on-time delivery, the improvement in profit margins over the past 2 years, internal schedule compliance, and inventory accuracy. So you'll see that the leaders performed more effectively across these. 96% for complete and on-time delivery within the leaders compared to 82% for the followers. So they're doing a better job of getting their products out to their customers when they need them effectively. This is leading to increased profit margins, better schedule compliance, better inventory accuracy, and these are all resulting from the capabilities and technologies that these organizations are able to implement. So this is how you can understand, if you're a follower organization, how you can become what we call the leaders with some of the recommendations we have on the following slides. So let's talk about the role of ERP in a manufacturing organization today. This shouldn't be a surprise for people on the phone, but ERP is truly pervasive in manufacturing, which should make sense. This is where this technology started out 30 years ago, and it was really designed to help manufacturers manage the supply chain and then built out to become more of a full business suite. 97% of leading manufacturers have implemented an ERP solution in comparison to 88% of the followers. So what I really think is the difference between the leaders and followers is the ways in which they're utilizing ERP. And we're going to see how some of the capabilities that are enabled by ERP are implemented in leading organizations in comparison to following organizations. And there should be some key recommendations that you're able to gain from this. So let's start talking about what's in an ERP. As you know, the majority of manufacturers already have a solution, but just because you have a solution doesn't mean you can't find a better one and find something that can more adequately support your manufacturing organization and operation. So we asked the respondents to the survey to identify the reasons that they replaced their last solution. These are things like obsolete technology. The solution they had was not up to date, not upgraded, not really fully designed to manage a manufacturer in the modern environment. This could be something that they've been using for 10 years and has really become outdated and isn't able to integrate effectively with other solutions or provide some of the more advanced technology that's available today. This is reflected in a lack of features, which means that maybe things like social capabilities or ability to support mobile capabilities as a result of relying on an old solution. Top-performing manufacturers are going to look to a modern solution that can do these things. Some of the other reasons that organizations don't replace or do replace their solution is the cost of maintenance and support, the lack of support from their ERP vendor. Your ERP vendor should truly be a partner with you to help support your organization more effectively. And then the one that I really wanted to focus on at the bottom of this slide is the inability to tailor the ERP solution to integrate changes to the business. So as your manufacturing organization grows and as time goes on, things are going to change within the organization, whether it's new regulatory mandates that you're subject to, whether it's the addition of new product lines, new businesses, new numbers of employees. There's a variety of things that can happen to your organization. And since ERP is truly the foundation of your organization, you're going to want to make sure that that solution can actually support any of these changes. So having these solutions that are very easily tailored to support business change is something that's going to make your organization get more value out of the ERP solution that's supporting it. So that's one thing you definitely want to make sure of as you're selecting a new solution. So be on the lookout for the solutions that can truly support your organization from end to end, and then be tailored to scale with your organization and do that for years and years, particularly as you accept new upgrades and stay on the latest technology. So this is a bit of an eye chart here, and this is really to show you that your organization can become more effective with its ERP by utilizing more of the functionality contained within. You've got leading manufacturers compared to following manufacturers in their implementation rates of a variety of modules of ERP. And these can be anything from financial modules through things that can help your supply chain and your manufacturing operations itself. So we've got accounts payable, general ledger, purchasing, then the inventory control, order management, MRP, and a bunch of other different things here. But really the key point on this slide is to understand that your organization needs to identify the key technologies and the key modules that can be utilized within the solution that you're selecting to support your organization. ERP isn't just something that you take lightly. You're going to want to look to get the most complete value out of the solution that you're implementing. And those solutions that provide more robust feature sets should be more attractive to you and make your organization more effective. So really keep that into consideration as you go through a new implementation to make sure that you really expand it through as much of your organization as possible. So we also talk a little bit about the extensions to ERP. You may be getting as much as possible from your ERP suite that's available, but there are still some point solutions and some technology that can be utilized in addition to ERP. Of course, it must be integrated effectively, and you'd prefer to buy these solutions from your ERP vendor anyway to ensure that. But these things can help to get more value out of the data contained within the ERP, particularly looking at things like business intelligence or analytical tools. Sometimes that's embedded within ERP directly, but utilize that information to make more forward-looking views and better reporting of the information contained within the ERP so your decision makers can make those decisions more quickly and more effectively in a more informed manner. Or also things like enterprise data interchange translators, so providing that ability to share the data contained within ERP with your extended enterprise, as I mentioned earlier. So I mentioned the integrated environment, and what you see here is, you can actually make this chart bigger if you click on the square box in your upper right. I know it's a little bit small, but the key theme on this slide is to really understand that top-performing manufacturers are more likely to have their single source of truth for the information that they have and that they actually want to utilize. So integrated business systems serve as a complete and auditable system of record. ERP integrated as the foundation of your technology environment with things like business intelligence, master data management, CRM, e-commerce, and supported by things like in-memory technology, is going to allow you to get a little bit more value out of the ERP solution and provide more data across the organization and more robust views. It's absolutely essential that this information is integrated effectively, so rely on your ERP vendor to help you to support that. So really what you see here is some of the key capabilities that manufacturers are more likely to have than all others, leading manufacturers rather, and these are all things that are supported by ERP solutions. And this is how a manufacturing organization can really run itself from end to end. We start with the the standardization of processes and enabling more effective processes on the left, going through more robust visibility on the right, and with continuous improvement in the middle here. So leading manufacturers are more likely to be able to standardize their procedures for things like production planning and execution through to their financial processes, and they're able to do this as a result of the best practices contained within their ERP solution. Some of the other processes that can be enabled by these solutions is the process for mock or real recalls on a real-time basis. This is something that's absolutely essential when you're dealing with sensitive materials. If you're a process manufacturer, maybe you may have bad ingredients and you need to recall a product. Being able to rely on your ERP solution to enable that is going to help your organization to avoid receiving egg on its face, really. Also relying on the data for demand planning and forecasting, scheduling maintenance. Really, there's a wealth of information and functionality contained within the ERP that's going to enable your manufacturer to become more effective. You need to identify what some of those solutions are and how that can be more effective for your organization. And then we have things like cross-functional continuous improvement teams. Manufacturers constantly need to be continuously improving, identifying ways in which they can make processes more efficient, identifying ways to innovate in a more competitive market where demand is volatile. Having every single opportunity to create that collaboration is going to allow your organization to become better at what it does. And then lastly, the last set of capabilities that leading manufacturers are more likely to have than all others is the ability to provide real-time visibility into the status of all processes, having the ability to drill down to that, and then also providing visibility into things like best practices, recipes, policies. All of this information should be contained within the ERP and make it that one central source of truth for your manufacturing organization. So as you're looking to select your solution, these are the things that your organization should have in mind and ensure that it's as robust and provides as much ROI as possible. So as before we go forward actually and talk a little bit more about some of the other technologies that surround ERP and how your organization can be more effective using it, I did want to show that these manufacturing organizations that are doing a better job of selecting and implementing a solution that's a really good fit for them see enhanced benefits across a variety of key performance metrics. So you see as a result of ERP, the leaders have higher improvements in inventory turns, stock-to-sales ratio, operational costs, administrative costs, and you'll be receiving this deck so you can go over these numbers later. But really, the key theme is that leaders are seeing more extensive results or benefits as a result of their ERP solution due to the ways in which they're implementing it. They're being smarter about selecting the functionality they need and expanding it across the organization. And that's really ultimately what's going to provide the most significant return on investment as your organization looks to utilize its ERP solution. So you've got your ERP solution in place, and I think some organizations may have the tendency to just kind of say, just set it and forget it and not stop and stop actually improving, and that's really a bad idea. Organizations that are more effective, those leading organizations, have those cross-functional teams that are responsible for improving operational performance, and part of that is improving the solution itself, making sure that it's being tailored to scale with the organization and support any changes to the business, whether they're regulatory requirements, new product lines, etc. So you see that 53% of leading manufacturers have an ERP solution that can be quickly modified to react to business change. This is absolutely essential. You don't want to rest on your laurels and end up like some of the organizations we saw earlier that had to replace their solution because it no longer supported the business. So staying current with upgrades and ensuring that any changes to the business are reflected within the solution itself are key things that your manufacturing organization should be doing. So, for example, one way in which manufacturing organizations are improving themselves today is through the implementation of mobile technology. And mobile technology can provide a lot of benefits to manufacturers as they're providing access to ERP to their users across the organization, whether they're in the warehouse, whether they're out in the field as a technician, whether they're on the manufacturing shop floor. You see that 41% of leaders in comparison to 24% of all others or followers have mobile access to ERP. But it's about more than just providing the full ERP suite on a mobile device. What it's really all about is providing functionality on mobile devices that is tailored to reflect its use cases. So rather than just seeing the same screen in a smaller format on a telephone, having an application that can help to support things like order management or provide information for service technicians. So top-performing manufacturers are more likely to have that access to ERP in ways that are tailored to the form factor and the utility of the device that is being offered on. And that's really going to make a variety of your employees more effective at their jobs. For example, we asked manufacturers, leading manufacturers, who has access to ERP information from mobile devices, and there's a wide variety of roles here. Of course, management typically has financial information and some high-level information on mobile devices. I think probably everybody on the phone here today can agree with that. But there are a lot of key functions and employees that can really utilize this information to become more effective. Sales, as they're out on the road, can check back with product design if you're a project-based manufacturer. Manufacturing operations, procurement, field service particularly will help you to improve that first-time fix. Maintenance technicians, engineering, warehouse employees, I think is something that's really important. Where rather than having to go back to a workstation as you're taking inventory, and there's an opportunity to really create a lot of mistakes within the information that you're inputting into ERP. Having the ability to do that on a mobile device is going to save your employees time and also keep your organization from experiencing some of those mistakes. So what are some of the capabilities that result of providing ERP on a mobile device to your employees? What we've done here is compare organizations with mobile access to ERP to organizations without that mobile access. And what you'll see is that those that do have that mobile access, and this should come naturally to you and shouldn't be a surprise, have increased visibility into what's going on within the organization at any given time. This is because employees can access that information no matter where they are and no matter what time of day it is. You see that 56% of organizations with mobile access to ERP have real-time visibility into the status of all processes from quote to cash. In comparison, only 26% of all others. So they're twice as likely to have that. They're more likely to have traceability of components and items throughout the purchasing, manufacturing, and sales processes. And they're more likely to actually be able to find that information more easily. You see that reports can be accessed in a self-service capacity. So rather than relying on IT for a report, these people with the mobile devices can actually find the information they need when they need it to make decisions. And that's really going to lead to a lot more informed decisions and faster and more agile decisions as well. But it goes beyond just visibility when it comes to mobile ERP. Mobile solutions actually make a lot of the processes that manufacturing employees are performing today more efficient. So, for example, 77% of those with mobile access have data entry at the point of activity. This helps to remove mistakes. It makes it easier to actually input that information immediately and takes a lot less time. You also see that fully integrated view of customer information. So when you've got a salesperson out of the office going into customers' offices, they're able to reference customer information. A field service technician is able to access customer information and understand how this customer should really be dealt with, what some of the agreements are that are in place, some of their preferences from the past. Having access to that information is only going to improve customer service and customer satisfaction and hopefully lead to a lot more profits. Also, you see that real-time access to things like work instructions, documents, best practices, and reports, or real-time access to inventory. So these capabilities really help both those in the warehouse as well as those that are out in the field, if they're service technicians, to become more effective at their jobs, because they have the information that they need and the functionality they need right within their hands, and that's all, of course, supported by ERP. So what you're going to see here is another slide that's very similar to what we have had before. What this is the same information, but only cut with organizations with mobile ERP in comparison to organizations without mobile ERP. And those improvements are quite substantial. And you see, for example, the improvement in inventory turns as a result of ERP, 42% in organizations with mobile devices, compared to 22% for those without mobile devices. Things like improved customer satisfaction, improved cycle time of key processes, improved internal schedule compliance. Employees are going to be more efficient and more effective as a result of this constant access to information. So with that said, here are some of the key findings. Again, what we talked about earlier, this is the same exact slide, just to reiterate before we move on to some recommendations and some question and answer. You'll see that manufacturers face unpredictable demand and have difficulty utilizing increasing amounts of data. So demand is a major pressure that I'm sure you're all feeling today, but also being able to utilize data effectively is a key component of success in manufacturing in today's competitive environment. As more global competitors come into the marketplace, your organization needs to be more innovative and more effective, and you can really only do that by relying on the information that's available to you within your business solutions. So while ERP is ubiquitous in manufacturing, manufacturers look for more updated solutions with better feature sets. So they're kind of spreading ERP more fully across the organization to help improve that ROI. So understand what key features your organization should be looking for and make sure you're getting those from your ERP vendor. So lastly, before we move on to the question and answer, here are some recommendations that I have for you beyond just reading the ERP research on epicor.com and aberdeen.com. Identify what your technology needs are. Where are the gaps within your processes within your organization? What could be improved, whether it's on the shop floor, whether it's in logistics, or whether it's back in the back office finance. Understand how your ERP solution can be more effectively spread across your organization. And keep that in mind as you're purchasing a solution as well to ensure that you're getting the full value. Supplement that ERP with supporting technology, things like mobile, things like business intelligence, and utilize that information if it's integrated effectively to continuously improve. So identify what can change within your organization, where the potential for profits really is, and you'll become more effective. So, for example, utilizing that business intelligence to understand which certain product lines have the potential to really pick up from geography to geography. There's a lot of opportunity there. With that said, thank you for listening to me today. Again, please check out this information. You'll be receiving the deck, but also on epicor.com and aberdeen.com. And we've got time for some questions, and I think Kelsey will tell you how to input those into the chat, and she'll read them off to me. So, Kelsey, let's see what we got.
Thank you, Nick. Yes, please use the Q&A widget on the top left of your screen. And we have our first question. Do manufacturers tend to make decisions to go mobile and then find an ERP to fit, or do they first find an ERP that gives them the capability or option of going mobile?
Sure. So what you got here is kind of a chicken or the egg question. I think what I would say is that in the solution buying process, or for organizations that already have a solution, I think really ERP probably comes first if we're being ultimately realistic. But the mobile strategy should be a core component of the ERP strategy. So as you're selecting a solution, make sure that there's the support there with your ERP vendor to provide that mobile functionality and those mobile applications, and you'll be in better shape. So, yeah, ERP comes first, but really mobile should be part of the equation as you're selecting a solution.
Great, thank you. Our next question, do you think companies should have SCM analysts to help make effective decisions? The more the information that goes down the line, the more complicated it gets.
So, okay, so you're asking if you need to have people in place to really interpret this information that's contained within ERP. Yes, and as you're identifying employees, it's probably a good idea to think about what their experience is with the ERP solution that you're using as an organization, because they're going to be able to interpret that data and utilize that to more effectively plan for demand. Really, that's the benefit of having a good ERP solution, is giving that information to those analysts so that they can interpret that and make those decisions that will affect the organization. So yes, I think there is probably opportunity or definitely a good idea to have employees dedicated to utilizing the data contained within ERP and make your organization more effective.
Great. So how important is it to stay on the latest version of ERP?
I think it's pretty important. We actually did another report earlier this year and found that best-in-class organizations are more likely to be on the most recent version of their solution. And this makes sense because, and what we actually did within that survey is identify the capabilities of organizations with a fully updated solution in comparison to organizations without. You're getting the latest possible technology and functionality from your ERP vendor, which will enable access to things like mobile, business intelligence, and you're really staying on the cusp of the best practices that your ERP vendor is building into the solution. So you don't want to stick around on an old version for too long. As one of the the reasons that organizations may not get onto the newest version is that they think there's going to be disruption to the business, but ERP vendors are doing a better job of making that impact less substantial. So it's something you definitely want to consider as an organization, and our research has found that it's a good idea generally.
Okay, and along those lines, how do I know it's time to replace my ERP solution?
Sure. I mean, there's so many different reasons that it might be time to replace your version. Maybe your particular solution is being sunsetted by the ERP vendor. Maybe maintenance is too expensive. Maybe you're not utilizing all the functionality, although I'd argue you should do a better job of doing that. Maybe there's a newer version or a newer product from your ERP vendor that's more attractive to you. It's really kind of a case-by-case basis, but ultimately you want to ensure that your ERP solution is supporting your organization and allowing you to do all the things you want to do. And when your solution can't do that anymore, it's time to replace it.
Okay, great. Have you seen any data or trends as to how implementing an ERP system affects employment? Do you know if it helps create or cut jobs? We've done a lot of research around those types of things, and I don't necessarily want to say that it hurts jobs and it makes jobs go away. I think it makes jobs more effective, and it changes really what the qualifications of a job are. You can do more with less, certainly with an ERP solution, but there still needs to exist that human element. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is it's making the employees that you have more effective. And
As far as a job standpoint, I'm not so sure that it's going to help you cut a ton, and you may not want to, but it's still something that's going to be in play with your employee base.
Okay, great. Are today's manufacturers utilizing the cloud for ERP?
Sure. So that's a good question. We do a lot of research around cloud technology as well, and manufacturers were one of the laggards. Meaning that they lagged behind when it came to cloud adoption of ERP. So even like 2 years ago, I would go to events where I'd be talking about cloud ERP, and everybody would look at me like I had 3 heads. I think that has kind of changed within manufacturing, where organizations are finding that there are cloud solutions that provide the robust feature set that your manufacturer needs, and I think it's really gaining steam. What we've seen over the past several years is we ask which deployment options would you be willing to consider for your next ERP solution. And over that time, the cloud solutions have trended upwards, and the on-premise solutions have trended downwards to the point where they're kind of meeting in the middle. And I really think what's most important is, again, ensuring that the functionality is contained within the solution, regardless of the deployment method.
Great. And this is our last question. Can you talk a little bit about what you see the future of ERP and SCM is in the coming years?
Sure. I think ERP is becoming more collaborative, providing employees to utilize the information in ways more similar to the technology that they're utilizing outside of work. So enabling that communication between the supply chain and manufacturing operations and new product development as well. So yeah, I think it's really going to become more collaborative, more predictive, and more effective. It's all about providing more ease of use of the information that's available to you.
All right. Thank you, Nick. That's all the time we have for today, everyone. Thanks again for sharing your research, insights, and recommendations, and thank you to the audience for your participation. We hope you found the broadcast today beneficial, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.